Welcome to this episode of Your Future, Your Finances. I'm your host, Brian Kuhn. Here we interview a variety of experts on the topics of personal finance, personal growth, and current events here in Maryland, D.C., and nationally. As with all segments of Your Future, Your Finances, our goal is to educate you as a worker and saver. In the area of employment, it is important to be aware of trends in the law and how you can protect yourself. To discuss this topic today, we have the opportunity to interview Sherry Cannon, managing partner of the law firm Tully Rinke, based in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We'll start off with the overall environment for the relationship between employee and employer. What are some of the trends going on currently?
Depending on the sector, what we're most familiar with at Tully Rinke is the federal sector. And in the federal sector, meaning federal employees, or no matter where located, it depends on who you ask. The morale can be either very high or very low, depending on the agency you work with. Right now, some employees of the federal government feel they're under siege because they're not getting the resources they need to do their job. Hiring was frozen for a very long time, and in some agencies it still is. There's a rash of retirements throughout the system as the baby boomers age and actually retire, as has been predicted. And OPM is seeing an uptake in retirements. And also in the media every day, some parts of the administration are basically blaming federal employees for all ills. And so it's very difficult in some circles to continue to do your job with good morale. Otherwise, you have people who in some agencies are unaffected because they're getting a lot of funding from Congress in this administration, for instance, DOD. And so you have less trouble with morale in the DOD agencies because they're allowed to hire, they're allowed to continue to promote, and they're as less affected, I would say, than some of the other civilian agencies. VA is under siege at all times and is still trying to correct the deficiencies of the past, and of course that's a big uphill struggle.
Yeah. Now, President Trump signed 3 executive orders, as I understand it, would make it easier to fire federal workers, among other things. Specifically for federal employees, can you describe how employment issues in this administration?
Yes. Well, with respect to the 3 executive orders that were signed on May 25th of this year, they did a variety of things, but most importantly for our practice are the changes or the attempted changes to the rules on how federal employees are treated with respect to performance management, i.e. their performance cycles and whether or not they get put on performance improvement periods and how long they can be. It affects what kind of notice folks get if they're proposed for any kind of disciplinary action. It limits time they can stay under investigation. It tells agencies, which is one of the provisions we're having the most difficulty with right now, is it tells agencies you cannot settle with an employee to clean their record, which is a provision we believe violates the Privacy Act. So there's a whole host of effects on individual employees throughout the life cycle of their job. The other 2 executive orders impact the collective bargaining system. Government agencies, government employees do have unions that impact certain populations in the government, and they're already limited in their inability to strike. There's a lot of things they can't do. So the unions see the executive orders as a willowing away of what they do have left, taking away what they can bargain over, limiting the time limits they have to bargain, and all 3 executive orders have generated lawsuits.
So the executive orders are intended to change the current rules. So
yes.
Overall, what are the current rules for the federal government to fire workers or equally important, change their benefits, their employee benefits?
Right. So just briefly with respect to firing, most, and I'll use the word most because not all agencies are covered by all of the rules, but as a general matter for the majority of federal employees, if you do something you shouldn't have and it's misconduct, you're insubordinate or you're yelling at your employees or you're doing something improper, you get a proposed disciplinary action. You are entitled by law to reply to it in writing, orally. You're entitled to all the evidence. You're entitled to an attorney of your own choosing, not of the agency's. and you're given certain due process rights under the statutes and under the regulations and how they've been interpreted by the federal courts. And then you're entitled to try to settle a matter amicably, like any dispute in any workplace you want to try to settle. Okay, these provisions with respect to that attempt to shorten periods that people are under review. It's an attempt to force agencies to make decisions in a fashion, quickly. Right now, there are no time limits on how long agencies have to make decisions, which can work to an agency's detriment if they wait forever. People can just retire on them. But there's a variety of statutes, regulations, and case law in the federal courts that analyze this. And the executive orders are attempting to change the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978. You can't do that by an executive order. Only a court could rule something to be unconstitutional or being interpreted incorrectly, and only Congress can change the laws. And so I feel right now this is going to be a big problem. On the performance side, currently employees are entitled to a meaningful opportunity to improve their performance. This executive order is attempting to limit how long that improvement period is. That runs contrary to the rules, it runs contrary to case law, it runs contrary to due process, and that's the biggest flaws we see in that. As for benefits, anytime an employee is under investigation or being terminated or proposed to be terminated or under an improvement plan, their benefits continue unaffected. If for some reason they go into unpaid status, anything over 30 days, the employee has to pay their own health insurance. They have to pay their own life insurance premiums. They pick up the government share. So instead of it being split, the employee's paying all of it during a period of non-pay. If you are fired, sometimes we get this question, the two things that are most impacted are health benefits and retirement questions. As far as the federal employee health benefits program, if you cannot retire, you will lose your health benefits. And you will have to go either take the COBRA, which is offered you. That doesn't matter whether you resign or are fired. You can get COBRA benefits for 18 months like everybody else. It's very expensive. You can go out on the market, on the Obamacare market, and buy it for cheaper, is what we understand. And your other benefits, they go away. You still have your TSP. You can no longer borrow from it, and you can no longer contribute to it, but you can roll it out into a private investment fund and do anything you want with it. You're not going to lose that if you're fired. What you lose is your health benefits. If you decide to retire, but you also don't lose your entitlement to the retirement that you have built up. So again, you don't lose your TSP, you don't lose that eligibility when you turn 62. So if something happens to an older worker who is eligible to retire, you can always retire before they can fire you. And why is that important? For health benefits, you have to have 5 years of current continuous federal service going into retirement in order to have your federal benefits continue into retirement. And that's very important because the benefits are substantial. The cost to you is much lower as a federal employee than it would be if you're out there buying it, or you have to wait for Medicare to kick in and you have to bridge that gap. So that's the one thing we caution people about tremendously, is you don't want to lose your health coverage. Whatever you do, whatever kind of strategic decision you make about your employment, always factor in your benefits. Are you getting them somewhere else? Can you afford to lose them? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So you say there's some disagreements, shall we say, in lawsuits. How will this play out in the court process, and walk us through that?
Okay. So the 3 suits were brought by 3 different unions. Recently, the judge in the district court has consolidated all 3 cases, and it's going to be heard on the 25th of July. The unions had asked for an injunction, much like the injunctions against the travel ban. The judge expedited the briefing of the case, so there's not going to be an injunction. So right now, the executive order is in place, all 3 of them, and the judge will hear argument on them late July. And hopefully, at least some of these provisions will be found to be unconstitutional or contrary to law. That's the great hope that everybody has. Also, Congress is putting a lot of pressure on, including the Republicans. There are Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and in the House that have written the president and asked him to rescind all 3. So given what we've seen lately about other declarations by the administration that have been reversed in various ways, there is some hope in Congress that the pressure they put on and in combination with the lawsuit will eliminate the need for the 3 executive orders.
Going back to the benefits, let's say it's unrelated to performance. Can benefits across all employees at once be changed by executive order? I wouldn't think so.
No.
No.
No. The benefits you get as a federal employee are either statutory or regulatory. And OPM is tasked as the agency, the lead agency, with dealing with employees, federal employees from cradle to grave. And so in order to change your entitlement, it's going to take an act of Congress. There is some talk now of changing some of the retirement calculations and asking folks to pay more into the retirement system while giving no guarantees they're going to get that money out, that sort of thing. So there is a movement afoot, although at this time, of the year, given the midterm elections, not a lot of people think that's actually going to come to fruition, but you never know. Because federal employees seem to be the target, easy target of folks who would like to, lower the budget requirements for federal employees.
One of the other areas of the law that you work in, which must be an interesting area as I understand it, is whistleblower cases.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the government employee, private sector employees have certain avenues via their state laws to blow the whistle on their employers. In the government, there's whistleblower statutes, the Whistleblower Protection Act and the Whistleblower Protection Enhancement Act. And under those statutes, there's ways set out that you as a federal employee can disclose wrongdoing, waste, fraud, abuse, violations of public health and safety concerns, violations of statutes. That's how the VA scandal came out in Phoenix. A whistleblower went and blew the whistle on the wait times. Once you do that, people think the fallacy is that you're protected. I can't be fired. That's not true. Oftentimes what happens is reprisal. There's a whole system in place through the Office of Special Counsel and federal statutes for employees to seek redress for being reprised against for whistleblowing. So our employees come to us, our clients come to us seeking help with one or two things. One, I need to make a disclosure of wrongdoing to either my agency or to Congress or to the special counsel, and we help them with that. And the flip side is, I made a disclosure, now look what they're doing to me. They're firing me, they're reprimanding me, they're moving me to gosh knows where. They're doing things solely because I blew the whistle, not because I personally did anything wrong or deserve it. And so there's processes in place for us to go to the Office of Special Counsel and seek relief there, or Congress, or through Congress. Inspector generals sometimes play in the mix too, but they really do not like to get into the civilian issues. The military has their own system for dealing with it. It's administrative through the DOD-IG.
If a viewer's watching this and they feel they may have an issue with their employer of some kind, federal or not, what do you think some steps that they should take other than looking into counsel?
Well, that would be my recommendation to people is that's always your last resort. Become educated, especially if you're a federal employee. There's training you can take. A lot of it is mandatory. Whistleblower training is mandatory in most agencies. Learn what your rights are under the equal employment laws. Do a little research. The subject matter and the material is there for your getting if you're a public sector employee. So get educated, talk to people, talk to the EEO office. Don't make the mistake, and a lot of people do, of talking to agency lawyers. Agency lawyers exist to protect the agency. They don't exist to protect the individual employee. So a lot of times people will do that. They may point you where to go, but they're not going to assist you in filing a claim against your own agency. So my first recommendation is get educated and know what your rights are. The second thing that's very important in the federal sector is know what the timelines are for bringing claims, because there are limits on how long you can wait before you make certain claims. So once you do that and make your appropriate contact, if you don't feel you're being listened to because you're a lone voice or you're being taken advantage of, then you should seek counsel, even if it's just to find out whether you have any kind of claim or whether you should let it go or whether it's something you should continue to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful stuff. How can we find you online?
TollyRinky.com.
Wonderful. All right, that does it for this segment. We've run out of time. We'll be right back after a break. Thank you for watching Your Future, Your Finances.
We all love our pets. For most of us, they're part of our family. And as part of our family, we need to make sure we consider their needs as we prepare for emergencies. As you plan how your family will survive a disaster or catastrophic event, make emergency plans for your pet too. And keep in mind that whatever plan is best for you is typically best for your animals. Remember to make sure you have enough food, water, any medications, a favorite toy, and other essentials your pet may need in their emergency supply kit. This way, your pet will remain happy and healthy during an emergency situation. For more information on how you can better prepare your pet for emergencies, visit ready.gov.
Welcome back. In this segment, we get to interview an expert on one of my favorite topics, which is health and nutrition. Although most of the education we provide on this show is personal finance related, your health is very important to those goals, perhaps more than people realize. So we are speaking with Karen Howard, CEO of the Organic and Natural Health Association. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about the Organic and Health Association. What is your mission, your purpose?
We're a nonprofit. We're in Washington, D.C., and we're celebrating our 4th year. So we're relatively new. And our real objective is to transform the relationship between consumers and corporations, building around trust and transparency, traceability, good high-quality products, primarily for the benefit of a healthy planet and healthy people.
Why did you form and how did it come about?
It came about in a conversation about how the industry could do better for its customers and the public, and what could be done that would be unique in the world for improving health and being progressive in terms of policies, research, and advocacy. So that's really how we started. Originally, we thought we were going to define natural and issue a natural seal, and only to learn through the research we did that people out there believe that organic and natural are one and the same. So our job now is really to promote even better than organic and what that means to people in terms of regenerative agriculture and how it impacts the quality of our food and our nutritional health.
You did a consumer ad awareness campaign called The Power of Nutrients. Tell us about that.
The Power of Nutrients is really our whole education focus. We do work a lot on research in terms of developing research for people to participate in. It's very different. But our education campaign is really designed to take that information out into the public in a very broad way. So we have the access to personal nutrition research. People can enroll in this, and over 13,000 people have enrolled in this over time.
Wonderful.
And now what we do is we have a site called nutrientpower.org or .com, where you can go and learn about the 15 nutrients that we're all deficient in, for the most part, the foods and the dietary supplements that are helpful to remedy those nutrient deficiencies, and the impact those nutrients have on your bodies, and really just a whole host of information around research that people don't have or they're confused about, and places to go and get really good information.
One of those nutrients, as I understand it, from you is omega-3. What does the research tell us about that, and where is it lacking?
The omega-3 research is very compelling. Roughly 80 to 90% of the world's population is deficient in omega-3. And that is, it's only in places where eating fish is really culturally part of the fabric of the society. Places like Japan and Alaska, where you see levels that are sufficient. And when I say sufficient, that means the blood level for omega-3 needs to be at 8 or higher in your body, 8% or higher. And most of us are rocking around that 4 to 5%. So the deficiency in omega-3, the research has proven to be very compelling in terms of your heart health. You can take 1 gram of omega-3 every day, and you can reduce your risk of death by cardiovascular disease by 30%.
Wow.
So we know that. What we don't know are some of the things about how much you need to take to get to that level, and what the implications are for other kinds of health situations. We know it's great for inflammation, to reduce inflammation. We know it's really important in terms of brain health. So we'll be able, through this project, to monitor over a 2-year period how your level of omega-3 is impacting your health personally and what that looks like as a global population.
So you can test for how much is in your blood.
You do, and one of the parts of our campaign is the ability to have your vitamin D and your omega-3 tested in a simple blood spot test at home. So you just pinprick yourself, you do 2 spots of blood, take it, put it back in the mail, and you fill out a very comprehensive survey, which puts you into the study protocol. And it's an IRB study, it's just a nutrient field trial. Not like some of the things people are used to hearing about controlled trials. So with that, you get these personalized reports on your health status along with your levels.
Interesting. You mentioned vitamin D, so that's another one. So the research on that?
The research on that is, we've been working on the research for vitamin D for a very long time. There's a large body of work on vitamin D. And it's frankly criminal that people don't have this information in their hands. So we know that if you have a vitamin D level of 40 to 60, which is nanograms per milliliter, that your health status is going to improve on virtually all fronts, whether it's pain or it's your risk of several kinds of health disease, including things like prenatal care. So the study that was just completed at the Medical University of South Carolina showed that if you had a vitamin D level between 40 and 60, the risk of preterm birth dropped by 60%.
Wow.
And this was in a hospital that experienced a preterm birth every day. So we live in a society where we spend $12 billion a year on the cost of having preterm birth. And through a $100 simple vitamin, you can really reduce that risk and save enormous, not just money, but agony for families who have to go in through that and endure that. Most recently, there's a study out now that has about 5,000 women who've had their vitamin D levels measured, and it's clear now that if you're over 55 and you have a vitamin D level that's even higher, 60 and above, you can reduce your risk of breast cancer by 80%.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so the issue is really knowing your level and living life well by knowing your level. Most people don't know their levels, they believe that it's low. And that doesn't mean much if you don't know where you're starting from and where you're headed towards. So to be able to know your level and know that if it's 20 to 30, which is where unfortunately most practitioners have guided their patients to believe is sufficient, it simply is not sufficient enough for maximal health benefits. African American women are even higher at risk, African American people in general, because you make vitamin D in only one way, and that is through exposure to the sun. You cannot eat your way to a great vitamin D level.
So similarly to the other tests, there's a program you have to test the vitamin D level?
Vitamin D level is the first one to come along. So it's once again a simple blood spot test, and you can monitor over time. Mine was 38 the first time I took it, which wasn't horrible, but 6 months later I was able to get it up to 48. Now obviously I'm working to get it up to 60.
That's good.
Yes.
You hear conflicting news about health benefits and vitamins and supplements. Why do you think that is?
I think the core of that is research is being done all the time. So you have the ability to do clinical trials, which is great. It's a cohort of people who are taking the same product in the same way as measured against people who are not doing that. Very effective when it comes to pharmaceuticals because you're measuring the impact of a foreign agent in your body to see if one, it does what it's supposed to do, and two, it's safe. Nutrients are much more complicated than that. And that means that you have them in your body already or you're ingesting them. So it's harder to see what's effective in that kind of clinically controlled trial. As a result, those trials with nutrients tend to focus a lot on how much you take versus what your level is in your body. So the studies can come back very erratic. They can oftentimes show some outcomes and strong ones, and then when you put them in what is referred to as a meta-analysis, and so it's a lot of different studies thrown together, and it's all about how much you take versus how much is in your body, you can come up with no result. And I think that's where we see the most negative press is in these large meta-analyses that say, it didn't do anything. And that leaves people very confused, which is another reason for us to have nutrientpower.org.
So what do you think the most important things consumers can do when they're choosing vitamins or health information?
Another great question, because people get a little overwhelmed with all the options that they have, especially now with the internet and people's sensitivity to price point. And I will say that dietary supplements can be a place where price is not always the best measure of product. Sometimes paying a little bit more actually pays off better. Not to mention there are lots of other ways to get, lots of ways to get your nutrition. So, you still can get it from food. And one of my favorites for omega-3 is to go with those cold water fatty fish like sardines, mackerel, and I take krill. So you have those choices. I will say about omega-3s, if it bothers you at all, if you have any adverse impact, and oftentimes people will complain about burping, then abandon that product immediately because it's not the high quality product that you want to have. So go into the aisle where people actually know, in the health food stores and the natural food stores that we shop in, and ask lots of questions. Vitamin D, the advice I would have would be go ahead and lean on D3 versus something called D2. D3 is the most effective that we've seen in research. D2 is plant-based and not nearly as effective in terms of raising your vitamin D levels.
So the study that you did, The Power of Nutrients, can people get involved with that still? How do they do that?
Yes, it's very easy to get involved. If you go to nutrientpower.org, you can sign up to be a part of the study cohort. You pay a fee for that, and in exchange for the fee, you get 50% discounts on great quality omega-3 and vitamin D. In this case, it's a krill oil. And from that, you receive your kit, you fill out your survey, you send your blood spots back, and you get your results back in around 10 days, and then you can begin to monitor your levels along with the other 13,000 people in the study.
Wonderful. Now that's the website for the study. Is there a website for the association?
The association, yes. So the association itself is organicandnatural.org. You can learn who our members are. We represent the entire supply chain. So all the raw ingredients that go into those finished products, into the whole finished product companies, and even retailers and consumer groups.
Wonderful. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That'll do it for this episode. We appreciate you watching Your Future, Your Finances, and hope you have some takeaways. I'm your host, Brian Kuhn, and if you have any questions for the show or one of the guests, you may contact me at bkuhn@psgclarity.com. Lastly, as always, a thank you to Laurel TV for their production and airing of this segment. You can watch the show every Sunday at 10 a.m. on Comcast Channel 71 and 996 for HD, and Verizon Channel 12 on the live stream at laureltv.org. See you next time.